Yo, yo, yo. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Third Sub pregame live show presented by Macy Sports. It's been a while. We're back. Sam and I we took an exile from the live show game, obviously, with a semi return to, fans in the stadiums. It was not necessarily the same. There wasn't a need for this show like it was before, but today, Canada, Jamaica, away, massive game. We had to return for this one, so we're excited to dive into all of this. I mean, massive one for Canada here. If they can pick 3 points up and put it on the board, it would go a long way towards their World Cup qualifying hopes. So lots to talk about out of this one.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Off a huge showing against Mexico. I think one of the more encouraging matches I can remember, at least in Canadian men's national team history, to back up what was some encouraging showings at the Gold Cup, and especially against Mexico, and kind of carry that through, was definitely a special night. And then to have a big opportunity here against Jamaica to put some points on the board, make some separation at the top of that table, kind of establish themselves where they want to be in the overall pecking order here in World Cup qualifying. It's a great opportunity. Tough for Jamaica right now, depth, yellow card suspensions looming, players not there, questioning the coaching staff. It hasn't been a good run. Disappointed not to see our Whitecaps, our boy Javane Brown. It seemed like everything was set up perfect for a start for him with the Powell injury, and just overall defensively, Jamaica hasn't been very good, but somehow he's out of the lineup. We'll talk a little bit about that Jamaican lineup and what we think of it, and dive into the Canadian lineup as well, because some Whitecaps content there. Derek Cornelius, welcome back to the fold. But no, super excited to get into this. And shout out to my Airbnb in London, England here, checking in from abroad.
Oh yeah, nothing like a good bit of Canucks abroad content, I suppose. Even though I guess in this case our export isn't players, it's a journalist. But I mean, as for the whole Canada versus Jamaica game, just so much at stake for Canada. They picked up a massive point in Mexico. You got to build off of that by picking up at least a point. All three is very much preferred in terms of helping and cementing your qualifying hopes. I mean, again, at this stage, any away point isn't a bad point in CONCACAF, but it just feels like this one, it's on the table for Canada. No fans with Jamaica, COVID pandemic, still going on in some countries, a lot worse than others. Jamaica hard hit. They're playing without fans. Their lineup is just decimated by injuries to key starters and stars. I mean, missing the Premier League big three of Ethan Pinnock, Michael Antonio, Leon Bailey. You just like you mentioned, that Alice Powell injury. There's many more absences like that. I feel like this Jamaica team is ripe for the picking. And I mean, as for the Javane Brown talk, well, maybe we'll get to it when I put up the Jamaica lineup here. But let's just say the Whitecaps could have used a right back like Javane Brown yesterday. And I've been on the Javane Brown and Jamaica hype train ever since the beginning of the season. But, just now that he's in the squad, it'd be nice to see him get used, considering Jamaica has 1 point in 5 games. But enough about Jamaica. We'll get to them in a second. Let's talk Canada. And I mean, Sam, throwing up the lineup here. You talked a bit about Derek Cornelius at the start, but other than that, what stands out to you from Canada's lineup here, chosen by John Herdman? Obviously, before I'll throw it off to you, just notes and whatnot. Lucas Cavallini, Kyle Larin, and Atiba Hutchinson all still out with injuries. Still all possibilities for the Panama game on Wednesday, so fear not. There is a chance they return. Otherwise, suspensions galore. Tajon Buchanan, Richie Larea, and Stephen Vittoria, Tajon Buchanan. Yeah, I got the three. Sorry, there. It's Stephen Vittoria, Tajon Buchanan, Richie Larea out suspended. Stefan Eustachio is 1 yellow card away from a suspension, as is Mark Anthony Kaye. And I think Sam Adekugbe as well is also 1 yellow card away from suspension. So keep an eye out on that. But this is the lineup. Sam, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, don't have to go too far from Derek Cornelius to a talking point for me, which is Daniil Henry. In big matches in particular, it's always kind of been a mercurial showing, right? He has his great moments. He has his moments to forget, especially some last ditch challenges, some nervy moments. So that's a guy that stands out. Certainly has the quality. It's just, can he keep his head at times? Is a bit of a concern. Alistair Johnston, I mean, this guy never takes a match off. Just, Johnny consistent and been putting in great showings. And then Liam Miller getting a start. I think that's interesting, and that's I was maybe thinking Schaffelberg might come into the mix, but they've decided to go in a different direction there. But Davies and David stay in. Osorio, the goal scorer. I think I saw on Twitter, someone comment this, how every time you feel like Osorio's maybe on the outside looking in of the Canadian national team starting lineup, he does something to sort of, remind you why he's in and amongst it. And it was certainly the case against Mexico. So, some standouts. I would expect, hopefully, Schaffelberg, I'd like to see him come off the bench. I think he could, especially in this Jamaican matchup, which might be a little bit more wide open as things go on, he could definitely have a fit. And I'd be curious to see, Alex, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this. What do you think they do with Eustachio in this one, given that he's on that yellow? They've already gotten, you've seen with John Herdman getting a little clever how they try to handle the yellow card suspension. So I wonder what they'll do with that situation.
Yeah, I mean, Stefan Eustachio, I think in an ideal world, you save him for that Panama game just at home. I mean, he's fit enough to go today. So clearly if Herdman's resting him, it's for a reason. But at the same time, I think Samuel Piette did deserve a start. So I'm not I think it's kind of the two sides of the coin. Okay, on one hand, you want to save Eustachio. On the other hand, you want to give Piette an opportunity. And I think that kind of opened up the door for Eustachio to get a rest. And I think if you're John Herdman, you keep him on the bench as long as you physically need to. If you can give him a day off or a night off, that bodes very well in the Panama. In Panama, if he gets a night off tonight, he's going 100, whatever he needs to do in Panama at 110%. It's not that he ever has an issue giving 110%, but you're getting that. There's no concern. So if you're Canada, you try to rest him as long as possible. Otherwise, the one guy I'm going to be curious to watch on the bench, you're speaking of resting guys, is Junior Hoylett. You missed the first game with the whole, COVID protocol, travel restrictions, vaccination, thing. What it ended up being, we don't know if it's due to his vaccination status. It seems to be the case, but either way, he missed that game. He was rested, but it sounds like he picked up a hamstring tweak in training as per Jamaican media on the ground. Obviously, considering he's not in the starting 11 today, it certainly at least appears to be some merit to those reports. Clearly, he's fit enough to be on the bench, but if you're John Herdman, can you save him for Panama and get a full start out of him in that game where you're going to need your depth to shine through, or will you need a bit of Hoylett today? I wonder that. But as for the lineup, I mean, to start, Max Crepeau in goal, I think he did his job against Mexico. If anything, he was a bit off his usually lofty standards, and I think knowing Max, that's something that he'll think about. It's something he's been thinking about. Okay, how can I be better? How can I get to a level? Because as solid as he was against Mexico, inside he could have done better, and that will drive him forward. I think that'll be key here today. I mean, Jamaica is missing a lot of their big guns on offense, but they still got a few guys who can make some noise, and they'll need Crepeau to step up big. Otherwise, I think that back two of Daniil Henry and Derek Cornelius are going to be a good partnership together. I think they've always seemed to play pretty well together from what I remember. Them. Cornelius kind of more the calming head, gives that calmness to Daniil Henry, who can have his big games. I mean, think of the U.S. game last month where he was phenomenal, close to man of the match, didn't set a foot wrong. It's just you worry about that one time he does set a foot wrong, it could be a 5-alarm fire. His mistakes aren't necessarily, some people's mistakes, they end up out for a touch or something like that. The thing is with Daniil Henry's mistakes, they tend to end up in the back of the net. So hopefully he doesn't have any of those in him, but I'm quite confident in the pairing, especially Stephen Vittoria. Give Kamal Miller a deserved rest. Back for Sam Adekugbe, Alistair Johnston. Not much to say. Johnston, I think he leads Canada with minutes this Octo for good reason. He's a machine. He just does the job consistently, game in, game out. It was nice to happy birthday to him for his after the Mexico game. He did turn 23, so maybe this can be a birthday gift for him, a win. Otherwise, Sam Adekugbe, he deserves a shout. Solid squad. And just going up through the rest of the roster, not much else to say. Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, they're going for a win with those two in the lineup in freer roles. That midfield trio of Sam Piet, Marc-Anthony Kaye, Jonathan Osorio, there's a lot of control there. Canada can win the midfield battle. There's a lot to like with that. So for me, it's just looking at of those names I mentioned. I think Liam Miller, the last one I didn't talk about, the third player. He's in great form. It's nice to see him in the squad. It's going to be interesting to see what he does because it's obviously a high-pressure game, probably his biggest game he'll have played or started for Canada. Usually John Herdman, tend to save him for the minnows. So it's going to be interesting how he responds because he's been playing at a very good level in Basel and looks to be a quality player over there for the Swiss Giants. And I'm curious to see how he responds today.
Yeah, and just thinking off the bench, another guy I'd be curious about sort of fitness levels and what the travel was like and if he has a role to play is David Witherspoon, because looked, immense in some moments earlier on, back in the spring, but hasn't been involved as much lately and haven't really seen anything from him yet. So I'm curious if he gets in the fold at some point. And yeah, that's a big spot for Miller in terms of Canadian national team showings. And I think this is a good opportunity to, Jamaica is by no means a minnow, but is a good spot to take that little step up. And I think you mentioned it already, but it's worth noting that this is, a bit fortunate for Canada that they're able to play in Jamaica without fans. I mean, it's unfortunate that it's due to, continued COVID issues, but to get to play one of these away matches in what would typically be a more hostile environment without that fan presence. So I think that maybe explains a bit that start, as well as just, I think, gives an extra little potential boost to Canada, although they have not been scared or intimidated or daunted, whatever word you want to use, by those environments so far. I think that's something I've been really impressed by. Just Canada doesn't, at times in the past where the moment would be too big, this team feels unflappable to that pressure, at least comparatively speaking. So that's definitely been something that's impressive. And I mean, no better example than the two most recent matches against Mexico that really spring to mind.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of away games, Canada's last two away games, Mexico, U.S., to get a point each out of both of those, phenomenal play. But this is really the first game of the Octo where they're heading into a away game as a favorite. And that's going to be interesting to see how they respond to that, because there's no doubt about it, they're a favorite. And that's dangerous because you don't want to be a favorite in a CONCACAF away game. That gives a boost to the home team. That at least there's no fans for them to even, add to that boost. But there's some teams that you look around the region who have gone into away games as favorites and dropped points. I mean, just off the top of my head, I can think of Mexico going to Panama and only drawing 1-1. That was a tough result that you don't expect to see. And there's many instances of that around the region, in U.S. going to El Salvador and dropping a point. So for Canada, it's going to be a massive test to see how they responded to that. But to give them credit, so far this year, they've handled that. I think of the one time that really stands out is when they went to Haiti as the favorite, the away team, and they snuck out a 1-0 win. That's the kind of performance I'm expecting to tonight. Maybe one of those games where it's cagey. Maybe the surface isn't to your liking. It's a tough environment. You're playing a good team, but if you can etch out one of those 1 or 2-0 wins, or even a 2-1 win where you get the job done. Yes, it might not be pretty, but you just get the job done. That's what you want to see from this Canada team. But to give them credit, I'm pretty sure if I'd go back to since John Herdman was hired, I don't think Canada's lost a proper away game other than the U.S. game, if I'm not mistaken, the U.S. game, Nations League 2019 4-1. Because other than that, all their away losses, against Mexico, et cetera, it's all been at Gold Cups, technically neutral site tournaments. But if you look at all the away games, I can think in Nations League, there's a few against, St. Kitts and Nevis's and, Cayman Islands or whatever. I think, small countries like that. But other than that U.S. loss, they've actually been pretty good in these away games, if I'm not mistaken, either picking up points or picking up wins. So this would be a good time for them to continue that trend here tonight.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking in terms of the matchup specifically, it seems like in the past, or these away matches where you can get, or especially when you come in as a favorite and you're facing a team that knows they have to scratch and claw for a result. I'd be more concerned if it was a team that had been really strong defensively, but just couldn't find a way to put the ball in the back of the net. But the thing is, Jamaica so far this tournament has really, so far this qualifying stage has really struggled to keep the ball out of the back of their net. Their center back pairing, I mean, they got Andre Blake back there, and obviously that's always going to give you sort of plus quality goalkeeping. I mean, he's one of the best in MLS, and continues to do that for the national team. But it's just they've been surrendering chances. They get those fullbacks at times committed down the flanks, and then there's tons of space for the other teams to whip crosses into the box. So I think short of an exceptional goalkeeping showing, is something spectacular. I think Canada is going to have opportunities in volume this afternoon. It's just a question of, are they able to convert on those chances? And so far, Canada has been relatively clinical in those kinds of environments when they've needed it. So I think that's encouraging if you're a Canada fan, if you're a little bit nervous about the idea of going into, a different environment as the favorite. I think it would be scarier if it was a team that could really shut it down defensively. And just with their lack of depth right now, Jamaica has not shown that quality. They're averaging, I think, 2 goals against the match this cycle. So yeah, it's tough because I think that's something that hopefully Jamaica would have prided themselves on going in, but just depth has not allowed them to really take care of business.
Well, speaking of Jamaica, let's just dive into the lineup before we continue here. Obviously, you can still see our faces. It's pretty funny how that crop worked out. But we'll roll through it quickly. Obviously, as you mentioned, Andre Blake in good form for Philadelphia Union. He's kind of I feel like he's going to be the guy that determines how Jamaica does tonight. He's going to have to really put up a monumental performance. But otherwise, there's a lot of interesting question marks there. You see some familiar faces: Anil Fisher, Elvis Powell, Kamar Lawrence, kind of at the back, adding a bit of stability. You know what you're going to get from them. I mean, Kamar Lawrence is one I'd be really curious to see how Alphonso Davies and Liam Miller attack him, because he's been in questionable form lately for Toronto. In the U.S. game, he nearly got sent off multiple times for struggling with speedy attackers. So I think that's a player to watch out for Jamaica. Otherwise, I mean, Junior Flemings was a player that really impressed me at the Gold Cup. I'm pretty sure he scored a nice goal against, I want to say, a Suriname, if I'm not mistaken, or one of the teams in their group, just off the top of my head. But he looks like a technical midfielder who can, make things happen in the final third. Bobby Reed, obviously wearing the number 10 shirt tonight. He's shown to have a lot of quality as well in the final third. Kamar Roof playing he's playing for Rangers over in Scotland. He's been getting a lot of starting minutes for them. And as you know, if you follow Rangers for Scott Arfield, they've been in excellent form the last few years. He's played a big part in that. So even though there's no Antonio, no Bailey, Kamar Roof is still someone that can do a lot of damage. Shamar Nicholson as well as someone that, more of a winger type. He is also very dangerous on the counter and can offer, if Canada's sleeping those, I think that front four we see at the bottom, Reed, Flemings, Roof, and Nicholson, can make Canada pay. So even though it's not Bailey, Antonio, Roof, I think Reed, Flemings, Roof, Nicholson is still quite the dangerous, attacking, I wouldn't say trident, but quadrant that Canada will need to keep an eye on.
Well, certainly that's been a theme historically, and even with some absences, that continues. That there's some dynamic options on the counter, some dangerous attacking threats. But just while we were chatting about the lineup there, I went and took a look back against the United States in their last match. They allowed 25 crosses into the box, so that goes to show a little bit just the volume defensively that Jamaica's had to deal with, and also not a team that's held very much possession so far, and that's really put a lot of stress in that midfield and a lot of stress defensively. But yeah, if they can get on the ball in space, if they can capitalize on an overcommitment from Canada and maybe get someone like Daniil Henry in space, that's certainly where there are opportunities for Jamaica. And if we're talking big picture about the Reggae Boys, this is, I don't want to say a must win, but they need some results here to sort of salvage some dignity in this campaign, right? Because I don't even know if it's about, you have a very outside shot at making the making it to the next stage at this point. I think it's about, putting in a good showing and being competitive, because some of those results so far, I mean, especially the one against Panama, I think that was a massive disappointment for the country.
Jamaica, no, the thing is, there's been so many draws that Jamaica are in a good position considering how bad they've been.
I believe if they win this match, they're
within 1 point of fourth place,
a point behind Canada, which seems crazy given how things have gone. Okay,
2 points behind Canada, but
still, that seems crazy given what's gone on so far and the feelings around those two teams.
Oh yeah, no, it's if Jamaica picks up a win, for example, say the U.S. beats Panama, an expected result, and I think the other games involved, I think it would be Mexico. I want to say. I don't have the schedule in front of me. I'll pull it up in a second. But just say U.S. beats Panama as they're expected to, an expected result. All of a sudden, Jamaica could be within 1 point of the fourth and final playoff spot to get into Qatar. And just confirming here as I get the schedule up, Mexico is playing Honduras. So say Mexico beats Honduras as they're expected to. Say El Salvador and Costa Rica. Say Costa Rica and El Salvador, there's a draw, or Costa Rica win, all of a sudden Jamaica would be within 2 points of that fourth and final playoff spot after a nightmare start through 5 games. I think you take that if you're Jamaica. So this is a must-win game for them. You lose this, it feels like you're an oceans away from a World Cup spot. But if you win, all of a sudden you're right back in the conversation. But the one nice advantage is if Canada does win, as wild as this sounds, a loss is not say if this was a loss to an El Salvador or Costa Rica, this would be terrible. But the one trend we do have to note is that Canada, US, and Mexico have slowly been pulling away from the pack. And say all 3 of them win tonight, they really will have pulled away from the pack. So in that case, that is an advantage for Jamaica, that they'll kind of be that 5-way, battle for a fourth spot if all those 3 teams do win today. But you can't ignore what a win would do for Jamaica. So I think that should be plenty of incentive enough, no matter how depleted their lineup is tonight. But enough of permutations. Sorry, my goodness, we have a few minutes left here. Anything we want to chat about before we close up here? We're going to close up a little earlier than usual. Obviously, Ryan, I see you in the comments. It's been a while. It's nice to see you. It's always a pleasure to have you join the show. Always, it's been a while, as we said. I don't know if you heard us off the top, but we miss doing stuff like this. Obviously, haven't been able to with the return of live sports. But shout out to you, Ryan. But otherwise, Sam, anything we want to talk about before we wrap up here?
Well, I was just going to say, I think what are our expectations, or what are you thinking for those other couple matches tonight? Is there any possibility for an upset, similar to what we're looking at with Canada, Jamaica? Sure, there's an expected result, but what are the odds that this thing goes chalk tonight and all the big dogs, so to speak, are able to pick up 3 points? And which of those matchups, if one's got to go the other way, what would you be the least surprised by?
Looking at it, I think Costa Rica, El Salvador to open up. That one, El Salvador's fresh off a big win over. My memory is just failing me today because I keep mixing up all the games. El Salvador beat Panama, which is a massive result considering the form Panama's been in. So away to Costa Rica. Costa Rica has been in struggling form. I'd say keep a lookout for a draw. El Salvador hasn't offered much to suggest that they'd be able to win that game, but Costa Rica's offense has been dire at best. Obviously, they have Keylor Navas, which masks over a lot of problems. So I'd say in that game, watch out for a draw. Canada, Jamaica, we'll keep our predictions for the end, so we'll skip that one. Panama, U.S., I think the U.S. are heavy favorites to win that one, especially after what they showed against Honduras away last window. But no Pulisic, no McKennie, Adams on the bench.
I think Panama's sneaky, and we'll probably talk about this at some point. Or we already talked about it on our sort of preview of this phase of matches. That Panama, coming into the qualifiers, look like if you wanted to say the worst team of the group, but they've been anything but so far. And the U.S. there's that U.S. men's national team feeling that sometimes these matches don't go according to plan. So I'm definitely I'm not saying I'm expecting an upset, but I'm definitely going to have an eye on that match because I think, you know, Panama is poised to potentially surprise. I haven't had a chance to look at their lineup yet though, so don't want to, you know, put the cart before the horse on that one. But that was the one I kind of had circled that I was thinking about at least.
Oh, I just saw the U.S. lineup again. Like I mentioned, they're missing their big three. You know, Fingerweg. Obviously, I think Tim Way is starting. They dropped Ricardo Pepi as well. He's getting a rest. He's getting it. They're starting Giassi Zardes. I just look at some of their decisions. It just feels like that's not a game you can afford to rotate for. You know, if anything, I think the formula that you're going to see if you're Canada and Mexico, and that's why I'm happy John Herdman's doing what he's doing tonight. You go gung ho the first two games. You put everything you have, and you pick up the pieces for the third game, because chances are the team you're playing in the third game is even more beat down than you. And what do Canada, US, and Mexico have as an advantage over everyone else? Depth. And I think we saw that in the last window. Obviously, Mexico drawing Panama wasn't the best example, but seeing how the US beat Honduras 4-1 in San Pedro Sula, how Canada beat El Salvador 3-0 and probably should have won by more, it shows you that importance of depth. So if Canada can, I think the fact that U.S. is easing up a bit could be a cause for concern. Otherwise, Mexico versus Honduras, I just haven't seen enough from Honduras to suggest they have anything to get more than a draw, and that feels generous to suggest. I feel like that one kind of has a 3-0 Mexico written all over it. Honduras in recent years hasn't always matched up well against Honduras. And you know what? Mexico winning is actually good for Canada because, again, like you mentioned, you're not competing with Mexico for a spot. You're competing with maybe the U.S. and everyone else around them. So if Mexico beats Honduras, you're happy if you're Canada. And if anything, you're almost happy if the U.S. beat Panama as well. But I just look at that one. I could see maybe a draw where both teams feel like we could have gotten more out of that one.
Okay, so I got another question for you here, and this is kicking it back to Canada. If we're looking at some of the younger unheralded guys off the bench for Canada, of Broguillard, Schaffelberg, and Brim, who could potentially have the biggest impact in this one? I already kind of dropped my hint that I'm pushing for Schaffelberg to get some minutes, but I'm curious for your answer to this one.
I want to see some Broguillard, man. This guy has been balling all year for Montreal, and the only reason he isn't, a guy like Schaffelberg, who's been in great form and I think can make an impact tonight, he's just gotten on the radar as of late. Canada's winger depth, there's a reason why he's in the squad right now. Canada's winger depth isn't as good as some people realize, and it just took a few weeks of good form to get Schaffelberg into the squad. Broguillard's been balling out since March, and just because Canada has 5 right backs, he hasn't been able to get into the squad. It took, the risk of Richie Laryea, Tejan Buchanan both being suspended for him to get back in the squad with how they've been, and obviously Alistair Johnson. So I think Broguillard is more than overdue an opportunity. There's a reason why when he made that appearance back against, I want to say it would have been Aruba back in those days where Canada was etching through the lower echelons of CONCACAF qualifying, where he scored that goal and his first goal, and he looked fantastic. That's been Broguillard all year. Every time he's played, he's looked great. He's just stuck in a position where it's hard for him to get on the field. So I'd love to see Broguillard thrown in a free roll save. Canada, depending on the state of Canada, because he is, semi-defensively responsible. He's still growing in that part of his game. But say it's second half, 30 minutes to go, I wouldn't mind seeing him thrown into a 3 at the back with him at wing back, kind of like he does for Montreal, and then letting him rip and seeing what he can do. So for me, I think Broguillard is my guy to watch of those 3.
Yeah, I thought of that because I'm pretty sure that our friend Peter Galindo had something a couple days ago suggesting, hey, maybe Broguillard could get a start on the wing. He kind of fits that profile. It was an interesting thing to bat around. And yeah, Schaffelberg and ZBG could have an augmented role, potentially going forward if that winger depth isn't, super, super deep, especially as someone like Hoylett gets a little bit older. So yeah, I'm hoping to see both those guys tonight. I don't know if Brim gets into the fold at all. We'll have to see.
Well, he got on the field against Mexico, to give him credit. So
yeah, so I don't know, and then we'll see what the status of Lucas Cavallini is too, right? Because you would like to have your sort of your striker in waiting back at full fitness, but I just don't know what that situation is going to be like, and if we can reasonably expect Cava back in the fold soon. It's been touch and go for the last little bit here.
Yeah, so hopefully, I mean, the Cavallini situation, I won't comment on that. I mean, hey, if Canada somehow gets Kyle Larin and Lucas Cavallini back for the next game, which is still a possibility, you're over the moon. But in terms of the striker situation, enough said for that. But for me, last things before we quickly dive into some predictions, as we love to do on the third sub. Been a while, doesn't mean any predictions. It's just returning to Ryan's comment. I missed the first part of or the second part of your comment, Ryan. Over under minutes for Jermaine Brown. I'll set it at 15. As we were saying at the beginning of the show, he should have been playing in the first place. But based on the fact that I think he's only seen the field for 5 minutes, if that, I'll set it at 15. I personally will go under. I don't know, Sam, if you're over under on that too.
I'm going to say over only because I think the match might not go the way the Jamaicans want it, and maybe they look 65th minute, we have to switch something up. It's not working. But yeah, I'd love to. That's maybe a bit of an optimistic take. I would love to see Javane get some more playing time, but it just hasn't been happening right now. But he's right there on the fringes, and I think it's only a matter of time before he gets a bigger role. So just got to be patient.
Of course. And then last thing for me, just a few notes in terms of the formation. Things I'm watching out for. I mean, I'll throw it over to you, Sam, as well for your thoughts. I'd say keep an eye on Sam Adekugbe today in his role. I think we're going to, based on what I've seen of this formation, I think we're going to see a repeat of what we saw in the Bermuda match, which I know was 14 games ago, so it might not be fresh in everyone's memory. But if you do remember...
Yeah. I recall.
You do remember?
It stood out, and it's been part of a. I mean, Sam's been doing awesome at the club level too recently. I kind of thought he might have started Mexico too. Like I'm super high on the way he's been playing recently, and yeah, that was the start of the Sam Adekugbe role, so to speak, right?
Well, that's it. I mean, that's what we now know as the Alistair Johnston role was first played by Sam Adekugbe against Bermuda, where he stood underneath Alphonso Davies and was just his cover all night. And I think by having him in this role today, Sam Adekugbe can whip in a cross and play great. He has great offensive instincts. I'll preface that. And I hope he gets forward tonight when Alphonso Davies roams inside. But
against
what Sam Adekugbe
doesn't defend the cross very well, mind you.
Exactly. And while you don't necessarily have the biggest man mountains in the box with Jonathan David and Liam Miller, say, if you can get them low crosses, Jonathan David in particular, he is lethal on crosses that are, for anywhere from his midriff down to his feet. He's shown that in his past, and he's even got a decent header on him. Look at that goal he scored against El Salvador. I don't know how he got enough power from leaning back at the edge of the wherever he was, I think edge of the six. But anyways, enough of that. I think that Sam Adekugbe is so key because he just lets Alphonso Davies run rampant. And I think we kind of saw Richie Larea play that kind of role against Mexico where he was kind of underneath. But just something about Adekugbe and Davies, they have this link up between them. Whereas, yes, Larea and Davies' chemistry is quite good and it's getting a lot better. Adekugbe and Davies just always click together. So for me, I'm kind of watching Adekugbe in that role. They showed it against the U.S. actually is another case where we saw the Adekugbe role playing underneath Davies. I'm keeping an eye on that. Otherwise, for me, Samuel Piette is one to watch because in past games where he's played, he's dropped a lot between the center backs, I found, for Canada, but more than he does for Montreal. And I think the fact that Canada isn't playing as, say, as defensive of a lineup, usually they'd have 5 proper defenders in the lineup. Today, they're only going with 4. Obviously, Davies is, quote unquote, a defender. He's not going to play like one today. I think the fact that Samuel Piette is also in indicates we might see him drop a little deeper, which is going to be interesting for that, but also B, it's going to be interesting because he's improved a lot in his ball playing ability, and I want to see if he can get involved via that avenue. And otherwise, Jonathan Osorio, keep an eye out for him. He's just, whenever he plays, Canada's just seems so much more coherent in the final third. So I think against the Jamaican backline and midfield, that might be a bit disorganized, especially in their defensive midfield. I want to see Osorio just have a free role and unlock things like he did against Mexico and like he's done every time he's played. So those for me are the big 3 I'd watch tactically for Canada today.
The Piette one's really interesting because he doesn't provide maybe that that same urgency or that same forward intent all the time that you've received from Eustachio recently, but you might not need that against Jamaica quite as much. You might be on the ball more, just in control. And as you said, he can, with a little bit less overall defensive play in the center of the park, he can drop back and provide that at times. So I think this is a really nice fit for Piet to get a start, and it matches up well with, trying to stave Eustachio for a match where where it makes a lot of sense, and hopefully you manage that yellow card situation well. Herdman's done a good job so far, so hopefully he can play it well again.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. Otherwise, I'm interested to see if you guys are right, Ryan, you and Sam on the over. Maybe we'll return to that eventually. Well, let's see. We'll remember to return to that. In that case, maybe we'll throw up a tweet on Twitter, seeing who wins the over/under battle. But Sam, we've ran a little longer than we wanted to, but that's all good. Lots to talk about today. Thanks, first of all, to all who have tuned in up to this point. Always a pleasure to do these live shows when we can. Might have to dust it up a few, more often in the future when we can. Obviously, time permitting is more the issue these days, or time zone permitting, should I say, not time permitting. Obviously, with our resident United Kingdom, resident over here. But predictions, we haven't done these in a while. So far, I don't even remember if we did a Mexico prediction. I know myself personally, I do have some records of me saying 1-1. So I actually did nail that one, I will say. I don't know if you don't believe me. I don't tend to lie on these sort of things. So this time I might, I'll get egg on my face if I'm wrong today anyway. So I don't know if, did we do a prediction for Mexico?
I can't remember if we did one on the podcast. I didn't make one sort of in the lead up to the match, to be honest. But yeah, I think you said 1-1 on the podcast as well, and I think I may have gone 1-0 Mexico. So I'm happy to be wrong there. And I guess I'll kick it off this evening for me. I want to go 3-0 Canada, but I'm going to go 3-1 Canada because I feel like just on the road, Jamaica's desperate. They really need something out of this match. I don't feel like they're going to go away without a fight. But ultimately, the way Jamaica's been playing defensively, I like this lineup for Canada. I think Herdman's got the initial matchups right. So I'm going 3-1 Canada.
I'm going 2-0 Canada. Pretty similar idea, I think. For me, the stat I'm watching is Canada's undefeated when they score the first goal this year. They have 9 wins, no losses, no draws when they score first, versus when they concede first, they have 1 win, 3 draws, and 2 losses. So if they can score first, that would be a massive game changer for them. I think they play better when they score first. And I think against this Jamaican team, they can find a way to score first. So I'm going 2-0 here. But other than that, I'd say usually wacky prediction, but I've got my TV on. They're already out for Anthem, so clearly they're not messing around. This isn't MLS where they'd loaf around for 15 minutes and start late. So I guess, Sam, on that note, any last thoughts before we quickly close up here?
Not really. Enjoy the match, everyone. It was great to do one of these again. And hopefully time permitting, logistics permitting, we'll be doing more again in the future. And go Canada, go.
All right. See everyone. Thanks for joining the third Sub Live show presented by Macy Sports. And we'll catch you again soon in the live or recorded world. But thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again, Sam, and we'll see you soon.